o'clock. So, 6:30, time to go. We have a big schedule. We got a lot to do. And we have a non-public at 7:15. So no dilly-dallying. We are broadcasting this meeting. I have read the minutes and made one change to Juliana Stevens' name. It's Juliana, not Julianne.
I have a change.
Well, let's hear it.
I think it should be maybe preliminary warrant articles, or, I don't know what preliminary warrant articles are.
Oh, that's close enough.
Oh, spelling? Okay.
Preliminary.
Well, I managed to skip right over that. Thank you.
Last paragraph, I don't think electronical is a word.
Oh, it is in Alstead. How many of us went to Fall Lake from high school?
Preliminary, yes.
I really have a lot.
Where'd you go to school?
I can't tell you.
Did we spell Wagner properly? B-I-E-G-E-N-E-R.
Yes, I looked it up.
People like to have their names spelled right. While we're reviewing the minutes, I'll just report that I did in fact find a carpenter who has been touring around town, and he's been giving us proposals for that work list that we assembled with Glenn's help.
Actually, the new door will be going in there next Friday, if not before. Not next Friday. It will be going in because
Upstairs or down? No problem. So, when you see him next, tell him not to give us a price for
I'm not going to give
that.
a price for that.
Did you get a price for that?
No, I told him to do it.
Well, that's probably reasonable. Risky.
You're losing more air out of that door than anything.
All right. So you guys wanted to talk about the threshold for soliciting multiple bids.
Yeah.
Would you like to go ahead and lead that discussion?
Oh, I'd be happy to.
Rock?
That's something I've talked about for a long time. Rock's talked about, we've all talked about. I don't know if it was a policy, but the tendency in the past had been once it hit like $5,000, we go out for bid. And I appreciate the sentiment that when things hit a certain dollar threshold, we should be asking for multiple prices so the town gets the best deal and the taxpayers are impacted the least. I would like to move that we decrease that amount, whatever. Put it this way, let me rephrase. I will move that for any purchase over $500 made by any town department, by any town employee, that three bids are acquired and we go with the lowest
What if
bid.
you can't get?
How about sought
Soft is
instead of required?
Okay.
Because
Well, I made my motion, now we'll open it up for discussion. But, yeah, sought is a good word.
my concern is that that number's too low and will create a bureaucratic logjam. But if you two guys are agreeing, it doesn't matter what my concerns are. But sought's important to me because we spend a tremendous amount of money on assessing and on auditing. And in both cases, we get two bids.
Okay.
And they're very similar. So I would encourage you not to make the 3 required, but the 3 sought.
Sought.
And, Roger had that experience 2 weeks ago when he was trying to get some equipment and he couldn't get 2 vendors to give him a number.
I also think we need to be going off of bid forms like we did with the sand.
Well,
No more of this guy gets an email about this and this one's told to do this. And if it's all done on a bid form, then
does that form exist?
A standardized bid form.
Actually, for different things, we've been sent, like I sent out real ones, proposals saying what we needed for assessors. But a bid one we can make up a bid one.
yeah.
And then just have everybody fill in
I mean,
the
if
criteria.
fill it in once and
Right.
photocopy it and send it
Right.
off.
Yeah, and it could be very generic.
Right.
Here's Town of Alstead, department, requester's name, and items for bid, a whole bunch of lines with space for description and name. So I'm not sure if I can amend or retract my own motion.
Oh, why not? We're all friends. departments here.
Okay. Then let me try it this way. I will move that we, for any purchases over the amount of $500, we will seek
Ooh.
3 bids for each one. We will require that all town employees, unless granted an exemption by the Board of Selectmen, use a standardized bid form, which will be created by our
Kelly,
administrators.
tomorrow.
Does that work? Do we want to encompass everything there?
No, I think that works great.
Awesome. Peanut gallery?
So my question
People are
is,
gonna say, it is low.
so my question is, like my equipment, I buy from a certain vendor because that's who they have it.
Nobody else makes it.
Yeah, but we buy the locally made. Our turnout gear was made in New Hampshire. I didn't buy Chinese stuff because it was made in New Hampshire, and there's been a long-standing relationship with that company. And
And we're not bound to go with the lowest bidder.
We're not.
okay,
So in a case like that, you would be required to ask for 3 bids.
true.
And you would give us the benefit of your advice on why we should take this one.
Okay, well, they would be comparable things because it would be different manufacturers.
Yeah.
That's entirely okay.
And I do the same thing.
The key is that it meets your specifications.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's not a qualified bid.
Okay.
And then our job is to say, well, here's the lowest one, but why would we take this one? Because this is a better company, because this is a local company, because this is an American company, all reasonable prejudices for us to have.
And this is no different than what I do at home when I'm on the internet buying a new product.
Right.
I see something that may be a little bit higher price, but I get it faster. It meets my needs there. Or it is some knockoff from some country that I can't pronounce and I'm not interested in, and I don't feel comfortable with that. We can make all those decisions here.
In public.
In public. Yeah, absolutely. Does that work? Any other comments, thoughts? Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, can I ask, how come you came up, or how did you come up to the 500, go from 5,000 to 500? I personally think it's really low. It could cause a struggle with whoever's the manager of the department.
You bet. I'm basing that on my experience in different companies and different corporations where the ceiling for that request was typically $500. So, not to say we're a city group or a First Aid Emergent Services or anything like that, but even in my own company, I mean, there's some things I'll run and buy at Staples, and there's some things I put myself through a bid process. And the town's got more resources than I do, and I still do that. Rock, I mean,
I do it.
So
For everything.
my next question is, would an item that's on the state bid list be excluded from that procedure? Because once it's on the state bid list, that is the lowest price because the state has done that research on it.
I'm sure the state could never be wrong. I understand what you're saying.
The state has special municipal pricing.
I think that's a level of detail that would be appropriate when we have a particular
Yeah,
purchase in front of
when it
us.
comes up.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, and say, here's the state bid price, and here's these other two, and yes, state bid is low, but in this case, state bid is high.
That would be cool.
Does this mean that any purchase under $500 does not have to have a form submitted? It's just considered an expense, and that every department head has the authorization to spend up to $500
They,
through the process?
they still to spend money require.
Because my experience has been, managers are given certain caps, $499 in this case, anything under that, they can just expense it, and they don't have to go through the process.
Yeah, the threshold for most departments to trigger a purchase order is $500, so it's a sort of.
So then that all ties together.
So, yeah.
Those numbers sort of fit together pretty well, don't they?
Yeah.
That works.
What happens if an emergency comes up?
Then we call it an emergency and we act prudently, as we have historically.
Yeah.
Which reminds me.
So like repairs and stuff.
I'm sorry?
This includes purchases and
Goods and services.
And, okay.
I would,
And so you would expect this also for Vilas, right?
I would,
Even though
I
we're,
would hope that Vilas would follow a similar process.
because we do have situations where we have only certain people that we've been able to keep coming back to do emergencies when it comes to electrical, plumbing, construction, and all that.
Do those typically fall in the $500 range or the $1,000 range?
They're over the $500 range when we have those emergencies. And it's usually called out within minutes after we find the problem. Because we have such a short period of being open that we react right away.
And I,
And we have found other people that, I mean, we do have this
Well,
last year.
I think the rules are different when we're talking about the septic tank overflowing onto the street. Let's not get caught up in that. Of course, we'd like to know about it, but I completely agree with you, Bobby, that some of the stuff, especially at Vilas Pool, in recent years has needed to be fixed right away.
and I
We
guarantee
can deal with that.
And there's gonna be a case that comes up with highway, where something crucial breaks at a crucial time,
In the middle of the night.
in the middle of the night, and it's gotta get fixed, and David's gonna go ahead and do it, and we're not gonna rip him for that.
No.
You know, we're gonna say, yes, you acted prudently under, given the circumstances. Please schedule your emergencies at more opportune times. So,
For the summer.
yes, yes.
Daylight hours in the summer.
Yeah, that would be
And I will tell you right now, you may have an emergency over to the library, and if you do have that emergency, I am gonna, if we don't have any snow between now and then, I'm going to have all the septic tanks plugged.
Plugged?
Pumped,
pumped.
pumped,
Pump's better than plugged.
no, not plugged. Pumped.
The one at the library seems to be misbehaving right now.
Yeah, it is, and it's a matter of time, I don't see how that one can be full.
Well, why don't you go over there and look when they dig it out? Maybe you can see then.
I don't want it.
Maybe it's full of old magazines. Who knows?
That's true.
We're gonna talk about something else now. You guys ready to enact?
So I think it has been moved. Is there a second? I second. Is there all in favor? This is your job.
Oh, go for it.
Aye.
Aye.
Very nice, and I will say aye as well, even though I still think the number's too low.
That's all right.
But, good, we're done with that. Health insurance, you guys have had a chance to review that spreadsheet for the empty night time, and where are we? Or do we want to, since that's an employee benefit, do we want to save that for
I think we might,
7:15? Because
want to talk about it.
it's not as black or white as I thought it was going to be. Same discussion for Article 2 wage sheet,
Yes.
so after 7:15. We have two auditing proposals. This is a topic that your thoughts would be welcome on. They are equivalent or nearly so in price and specification. We are not unhappy with our current auditing firm, but the advice we receive is that prudent men and women change auditing firms after some period of time to reduce the risk of over-familiarity. Is that true?
Well, it depends. Are the same auditors coming through every year?
No, they always bring, one of them is the same
The
usually,
lead auditor.
the
may be
lead
the same.
auditor, and the rest of them are whoever available, I would assume, that comes.
Have
different
any of
people
the
come
audits
in.
been challenged and found to be less than
No,
complete?
no.
I don't believe in changing auditors at whim. Usually there's some rationale. I don't know how many years, if they've been in place.
They've been in place a lot of years, but this one that also gave us a bid worked with them at one point too. So they're probably much, the
You
same.
have to assess the capabilities of, like if this is one, a single standalone person with a couple of people working for him, that's one thing. If versus your auditing firm, that's a larger firm, more well established. If they're equal, then, I wouldn't recommend necessarily a change.
So the town manager of Lineborough, who's a man I've come to respect, town administrator, had this discussion with him, and he said unequivocally that municipal auditors should be changed 5 years or 10-year cycles because of the risks of too much familiarity.
Well, that's what my question was, how long have they been with you? I mean, you know,
Better than 10 years. And he recommended the other corporation. So he said, we've had these guys for 3 years, we like them a lot. But again, he said, we did not like the other guys, it's just, these guys are really good, and we're getting
Like
what we need.
politicians, change them every so often.
And there's only about two in the,
Are you editorializing? Because that's a different portion of the minutes.
Do we know of any other town that has had issues?
Well, certainly Ackworth had issues.
well, we don't have any water.
Oh, right.
Problem solved.
Yeah. Boy, they saved a lot of money doing that, didn't you?
We got plenty of time to do it. I'm fighting for an auditor.
Bobby.
Since years ago, I used to be an auditor and worked for a large firm. When we were hired to do audits for, towns or cities, there were 5-year contracts because we knew that they needed to be changed, and we highly recommended that. Private businesses were different. We could be there for 20 years, but we also every year put in different auditors. So I think you are right to change, to be honest with you, if you had the same one for 5 years at least.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I'm going to recommend to you that we change. You're all right with that? And please allow me to write a nice letter to Klosnick and Sanderson on your behalf. We'll sign it next week, explaining what we've done and why. Because we don't want them to think that we're unhappy with them. Robert?
Pretty good.
Well, we solicited more broadly than that, and we got 2. What should we do? C, not receive.
Yeah, and I just gotta, well, and if we can, probably $20,000 in pipe, so this is, I assume we would have gone out for bid for that, right?
I do not know. Does it say who the vendor is?
It is First Waterworks, who we worked with last year, right?
That
And I
is
think they,
one of the state bid firms, but we can
I
confirm
would
that
like
data.
Yeah, I would like to confirm that before I sign it, just because it's a big chunk of cash.
I think that's reasonable, and would you mind doing that tomorrow? By
Call David up.
call David and get the lowdown on that, because I'm nearly certain that that is a municipal price from the only approved vendor on the DOT list. But I don't want to be responsible for being nearly certain. I want you to be absolutely certain. And I know from working for the Fuzzy Brothers that the town pays a whole lot less for the same culvert than the Fuzzy Brothers do buying it from the same firm. There's some kind of deal
And that's what the state bid
for
consists of.
governments.
and now he does that for salt and sodium chloride and that too, because all of them come through here with what their state bid is.
Speaking of which, Kelly, when you finish that bid form tomorrow, it's really time for us to get sand and gravel inquiries out into the community. I learned at the coffee shop that we'll have more bidders than we did last year, which I think is terrific. But we really can't responsibly present this budget to the folks in February without those numbers. So we may actually want to make a decision about who the vendor is in January. So just stay in touch with me, Kelly, and we'll figure it out. David and I can tell you where to send them. And I think a fairly short turnaround, 15 days ought to be enough, don't you think, Rob? I mean, essentially, we're asking for the same services in the same place for the same material that we've gotten year after year after year. And it's not going to be a mystery to most of these bidders what the product is. All I really want to know from David is what the volume is and if that changes. And who's on his vendor list for that. I can think of 4 people right now. Basins and JP and Fuzzies and I think he's taking a picture of the document. Too bad you're not taller.
Do you want me to hold it flat?
Bunch of comedians. So same deal on the assessors, although in this case we have only two. We've solicited bids, we received two. They are similar in price. Staff is very clear about which one they prefer, which is to stay with the existing firm. The new proposal comes from a firm that we are familiar with, that we've done business with in the past. They're not terrible, but they have a pricing scheme that is punitive for uncertainty. That is, if the economy ever picks back up, and we have a lot more pickups, that agreement will penalize us financially for that lack of predictability, whereas the existing operation is linear. So my recommendation to you, the staff's recommendation to us, is that we stick with the existing firm. Same. And you don't have to decide now, but you're going to have to decide now or next week.
Yeah.
Then you might want to read the proposals before you do.
I've got the proposals, but I have not read them.
No, you've got the other ones.
So I do.
You don't have, I only have one copy of the other. What I can do
Well,
is
that would
copy
explain
that.
it.
Huh?
That wouldn't explain why you hadn't read it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
There we go. That was long.
And it's going to get longer if I don't hurry this up. Bell Hill, I had a long talk secondhand with David. This is the piece of Hill Road that's sliding into the brook. We received $6,000 in change from FEMA to fix it in 2013. I'm going to recommend that we send that money back because that $6,000 is supposed to be a match, an 80-20 match. And contractor I talked to said, doing that by the book is about a $180,000 job. So all is not lost, because when that road slides into the brook, it becomes an emergency, and we don't have to do it by the book anymore. We can do it with our guys and our stuff. And in that case, $6,000 would probably do the job. So I'm going to recommend that we take that warrant article out of the warrant, because we can't afford to fix that road that's not in terrible shape at the moment. It seems irresponsible to wait for an emergency, and I don't want to advocate that. But we got to find something else to do with that little stretch of road for the few people that it serves. That's $1 on the tax rate, ladies and germs. I'm not going down that road. Right? Be careful on that road with your new cruiser.
It is a mess. I drive that a lot.
I drive it every day. We received a communication from Mike Jasmine recommending that we, the town of Alstead, increase the veterans exemption from $50, which is the lowest of the 10 towns in the county. The highest is 500. Michael recommends $250, but encourages us to consider 500.
I propose 300.
There you go. Going once?
I'm good with that.
In favor?
Sure.
$300. That was easy.
Starting with?
Starting the following tax year, 2016.
Okay. 2015's all over anyway. For the bills. Okay.
Thank you, that was painless. Wireless dam inspection, we talked about peripherally, and we know what we're doing, which is we're going back through Kelly to torment some more firms via Sean Sweeney, because we have sought bid proposals for this service and received 0. And 0 is not enough. The reason I'll remind you, the reason this dam needs to be inspected is because the Department of Environmental Services sent us a letter of deficiency in 2012 threatening to fine us giant piles of money if we didn't act on it immediately. And they've been very good with us because we've shown incremental progress every year. The dredging out by the gate was part of that, and clearly the inspection couldn't occur when the lake was full of mud and water. So we're moving, just not as fast as they would like.
Is the inspection, the inspection has to be done with an outside firm, engineering firm?
Yeah, licensed structural engineer, preferably with a giant liability policy and plenty of experience. I know exactly the firm I want, but they have failed to submit a proposal.
They also not only do the inspection, they're also supposed to figure the flow, right? And the 100-year flood.
What I have recommended to staff is simply to send that letter of deficiency to firms and say, do this, rather than have me interpret what DES might have thought that they were demanding. I don't want to be in the middle of that. Here's the letter, you do that, how much? And in our case, it's also gonna be how soon, because that thing's gonna fill back up again before June, like that. Even with the gate open, it'll fill up.
You think so?
I guarantee it. If we ever get any snow, and then when it melts, I guarantee the water will be over the top, gate or no gate.
I know it goes over the top once it rains.
Kelly, have you
Doesn't take
captured all that?
Yes.
Excellent. And we are ready for Jesse.
Okay, so 2 weeks ago, we voted to go to the maximum Medicare and Medicaid billable allowances. Kelly and I did that today. We only use 3 procedure codes, so it's relatively easy. The mileage procedure code, which is A0425, which was $7, has gone up from $7 to $11 per mile. BLS mileage and care, which is A0429, has gone from $225 to $380, which is a $155 increase. And advanced life support has gone from $275 to $435. That being said, with our ALS providers and needing a paramedic from Deluzio, with this new pricing in place, we will
We
still,
won't be upside down,
we won't be upside down. We will be above water.
presuming that the transported has insurance.
Correct. In a perfect world, that would put us above water for everything.
In a perfect world, we would all die at home in our sleep.
We
I
never need.
never called you.
So
I
those are
hope the
the,
internet got that, by the way.
so these are the increases, 160 and 155, and $4 a mile.
I look forward to giant streams of revenue from the ambulance service.
Well, I look forward to about twice as much.
And is it fair for us to assume that your call volume increases each year as we age as a community?
It does. And that being said, these numbers aren't just made-up numbers. These are the allowable numbers, much like the old ones were based on what Medicare and Medicaid will pay. That's all these numbers are. This is the amount that they will pay.
So you don't charge beyond that, which the individual?
No, so some services do, but the way our fee structure is in place, we don't do that. The other thing that I would like to propose is we are subsidized by the taxpayers, and I understand that. And I agree that we should bill a taxpayer one time, but I think that somebody that's not, somebody that comes through town or does whatever, I think we should use due diligence in collecting the money from them. I don't see why our taxpayers should subsidize someone that's not from here.
So before we start that discussion, which I think is a good one to have, because we've got 2 selectmen for whom this policy would probably be a mystery. Historically, when we first started charging for ambulance services, that was so controversial that we decided that whatever select board that was back all those years ago, we said we will charge people once and not make any effort to dun them or lien their property taxes or anything of the sort. What we want to do is collect from their insurance company, not from their grandchildren. And that was the official articulated policy of the town until this moment. I think it's entirely appropriate to revisit that right now.
So the proposal is not to change anything as far as citizens of Alstead,
Correct.
but only should the wayward driver get in a car accident and he happens to live in Keene,
Correct.
they've got money. Then we go after him.
I don't see that it's.
Who would go after
Can you
them?
do that legally?
That's that's my second question, yeah.
Well, we can answer that question, but not in this room. So I'll just write a note to LGC and we'll revisit the conversation.
Check on that.
Let's try to spin this another way. Are the people in the room generally approving of the policy of billing users of the service once without dying, without sending it to collections, without harassing phone calls, without tax liens, which I don't think are legal. Are we generally in favor of that?
You charge them only that which the insurance will pay.
It doesn't pay the whole thing. Medicare and Medicaid do not pay
I
the
know
whole thing.
that,
It's a
but-
percentage of.
So do they have to have a rate, here's my question, does the rate have to be greater than the maximum that they can pay, will pay in order to get that maximum pay?
They won't pay. Medicare and Medicaid set an amount,
Which is this amount.
which is that amount.
Which is,
And they pay a percentage of that. It doesn't matter whether the bill is way up here or whether it's under.
that's all okay.
That's all they'll pay.
Correct. So of this $435, Medicare will pay 80%, and if you have a supplemental insurance, a secondary and a tertiary, it will take care of the balance.
So are you're willing to accept just the 80%?
Correct, because we were getting 80% of 275.
Right, so we're still higher.
Correct.
My question is assuming this would be legal to treat different people differently, to bill them differently based on where they live, we have to address that, but who would do the collections? Would that be the responsibility?
Yes, we have a service we pay to do that now.
Okay.
But Chris, you're not really billing them differently, you're collecting them differently.
You're treating them
You're
differently.
basically writing off if you're an
Right.
Alstead citizen,
I get it,
yeah.
but you are treating people different.
I understand the quandary, and I will get you an answer.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're
But-
billing them the same, but you are treating them differently.
But
Correct,
also what
because it's
happens,
taxpayer subsidized.
but what happens with Deluzio, if they're called to an accident, say, and the person is from out of town, and they don't get paid, we pay.
Yeah.
Yes. And that is the root of this conversation,
Right.
because I have several of those bills that we obviously can't discuss in an open forum that are relatively large bills that fall on the town's shoulders to the tune of $1,800-$1,900 for a person who does some tomfoolery in our quaint little town, just passing through.
I've done tomfoolery in this town,
I understand that.
and I look forward to doing it again.
However, I don't think it fair that the taxpayers have to subsidize somebody from out of town's tomfoolery because it happened here.
It's sweet to find someone so young who thinks that the world will ever be fair. But I promise to get you an answer to the legal question.
Goal of that.
Yeah, it
You'll
is
be
interesting,
curious.
it's interesting because we do pay for it, and if they don't pay and we use Deluzio, then we pay for it anyway.
That's
understand.
what
I get it.
And what it is Deluzio have gone after those people, and they can't collect from them,
Right.
because they're
Yeah.
doing their own.
I have a question. Are we only responding to calls within the town?
Yes.
Okay, so we do not respond to...
We've responded one time in the last year out of town, and that was to a house, 3 houses into Ackworth. Mutual aid, which we have been always on the mutual aid compact. However, because we only have a single ambulance, we're the last one considered, where towns that surround us have multiple trucks. Because if our truck was to go out now, they would have to call mutual aid to come here, and that would further compound the problem.
So we need multiple trucks in order to expand the range and therefore the income?
Maybe someday, but I would like to get a just and proven system to pay for what we have first.
Wasn't there some legislation passed a couple years ago that was supposed to lower all these costs anyway?
Something about if you like knocking, you like keeping.
It's like, everybody talks about these healthcare costs going up. I know we, never mind.
So,
Don't bother writing any of that down, Dave.
so that is what I'm asking. Ultimately, it is your decision. However, I just think that it's only fair that with our taxpayers subsidizing it, that we subsidize it only for our taxpayers. Because it belongs to them.
Noted, and I think Phil's suggestion of getting some guidance regarding the legality first is the right move.
Oh, absolutely.
You mean as opposed to making the policy first and then getting the legal advice? We've done it that way too, I can tell you how that ends.
All the bones.
Can I just ask one more question?
Sure.
Just for informational purposes. What is your capability, or are you limited in what service you can provide as a responder to any situation where otherwise you might have, because you don't have, paramedics, is that?
Right. So, where we stand with that is there is a couple of state regulations, and we at this point, the hospital is not comfortable with us having narcotics on the truck. That's the difference. We can do everything except for narcotic pain control. And with the current, they said something about a drug problem around it. I'm not sure what they're talking about. But they're really nervous about putting narcotics on trucks in non-full-time services and non-secured, non-watched buildings due to this little opiate thing they mentioned. So that is the only capability we don't have at this point is narcotic pain control. We do have paramedics, however, they cannot act up to a paramedic because we're not licensed to that. So basically, they're limited to not being able to give the pain control.
And that probably will change in 2017.
Correct.
I thought you were working on that.
We are. There's several issues that played a key factor. One was vehicle security. Second was building security. And third was we had to have someone check and acknowledge the presence of most narcotics every 24 hours on the button 7 days a week. And the only people that could do that would be one of the two paramedics. So the cost incurred by paying someone to go there every 24 hours to check them compared to what we outsource, it's not worth the liability to me, to you, to the town, to be carrying around such popular
So if
products.
something is a real serious issue, whatever that might be,
We can handle
you
it.
can handle it, you can get them to the hospital.
Right, it's just going to hurt for a minute.
That would have been the only
Gonna hurt,
thing.
hell of a lot of these, yeah,
Yeah, sort of like tying people open at some sort of level of invasive stuff that.
So the only other thing would be cricothyrotomy.
Okay.
So we can't do that. That is a surgical airway.
Oh, you can't put in a surgical airway?
We cannot. That's a medic level skill because that requires pain control.
So if someone needs that or they die, you can't do that?
We have other options.
In
We
an
have seven.
accident?
We have 7 other airway adjuncts that we could use.
Okay.
So,
And a paramedic will come up routine, so.
correct.
Not in 4 minutes.
We're not.
Right.
We're not going to be any worse off than we've ever been. We're hoping to be better off than we have been in the past, but the narcotics issue is very concerning to the hospital as well as me. Until those guidelines change, we'll revisit them in 6 months. Because at that point, the narcotics won't ever belong to the town, they'll belong to the hospital. We as the town cannot have them. the hospital has to have them.
Jesse, that's probably more detail than we need.
Suffice it to say that we're probably not big enough yet to offer the paramedic services that we actually have in town. But we're moving towards that very slowly by the book. Is that a good summary?
That is a perfect summary.
Okay, so are there other remarks or questions for the good of the order? 7:15 is right around the corner.
We will revisit the billing issue next week.
Well, I believe that we all approve of the new numbers last week,
Yes,
effective immediately.
yes, but
So what we're going to do is get some legal advice about your proposal for stage 2, discriminatory pricing.
perfect, thank you.
Other questions or answers before I chase you out?
Hey, Joel, don't you chase anybody out of my town?
Did you not ask us for a non-public?
I did, but,
Is that what you want?
yeah, but don't chase people out, you got a business carry on.
7:15, thank you, Alan, but we want to keep things rolling here, because otherwise we'll be here at 10.
Last question that I have, what's going on about the recommendation about a possible town administrator? The hiring of, or the considering the hiring of, or?
We're calling that a work in progress. And we're not going to be more specific about that now because it's a staff level discussion, and we haven't completed our work on that.
Yeah, I think, from me personally, I think it's a great idea. I haven't heard anybody else on the select board think that it wasn't a great idea. It has budget implications. If we were to do it in one every year, we would have to work with the budget to make that happen.
Well, the last I had heard is that whether you had the authority to hire somebody or if it had to be put into a warrant article.
We have the authority to do that, but not without budgetary support.
Right.
So if we make a change and it has a budgetary impact, it's radically different from the.
So if you were to receive a warrant article recommending that that be done, and it's approved, I'm not saying that would happen.
It wouldn't compel us, but it would certainly make it easier.
You have to put in it what you were gonna pay them.
Yeah. No, I just.
And then you have to take it out of it can't be in the budget.
That's okay. Right, I mean, she's right. If it's got dollars in it, then it does have to have an accurate dollar figure in it, which you could get from calling Lineborough and talking to that guy, because he was really impressive. He's got a bachelor's in public administration.
We probably won't get him.
Well, his select board was really clear with us that we weren't going to recruit him.
Yeah.
He's plug and play. I mean, he's great.
Yeah, but I can.
Well, talk to Rich Nalamaco. He was impressed with this guy.
I know.
But that would be a source for revenue administration. If the voters elected instead to petition a warrant article that just encouraged without a dollar amount, that would be
I mean, it's sort of like a
a
resolution
resolution.
type thing.
Yeah, for me, that whole idea, the whole concept, I don't want to rush into it. I would want to see that if we're going to ask the taxpayers to fund another full-time town employee with all the other costs that go along with it, that we, at least as selectmen, expect to see savings in these areas, and we would expect to see budgets drop, so.
And I would expect you to be an EMT if you said you're in town all the time.
Exactly.
We put crazy things in that in job description.
So while I understand the sentiment, I didn't support the idea, I don't want to move hastily and us just throw a number out there.
I asked because it was a recommendation to seriously consider it. The word seriously was wrapped around that one.
Yes.
There was a number of salary numbers thrown in there, but of course there's more than that.
Yeah, you're just looking for an update.
I'm the only one on the committee that is still here in town. I want to just find out, where your head's on that.
I tell you mine, I'm serious about the proposal, I just want to make sure we do it.
And he is a great source.
He's a great resource, and still willing to answer questions in spite of the way we've treated him by pestering him with questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Sam?
Please excuse us.
Okay, I do have my movies.
I haven't got it yet.
You haven't gotten it yet?
No.
That's because I'm so happy.
You have one.